Okay, well, this morning we are on lesson 148 of a workbook of A Course in Miracles, and it is also another review lesson. We got a couple more to go in the review lessons. Then we're going to start into the second part. We're going to have loosened our mind enough so that we can begin the practice of acquiring right-minded or true perception in regards to in regards to any single event. I mean, actually, because everything's generalizable, and that's also the nature of the lessons that we have today. The idea that they do generalize, and my mind holds nothing. My mind holds only what I think with God. My mind holds only what I think with God. Lesson 135. If I defend myself, I am attacked. And sickness is the defense against the truth. And it's generalizable. Mostly what we have to begin to recognize is that it's one illusion. There's not a lot of different illusions. There's a lot of different illusory scenarios within the totality of the illusion, but it is the totality of the illusion that we're here to release ourselves from, not just illusions within the illusion. Yet in any moment of illusion, we can see what's occurring within us by allowing the experience that we're having to give us the information we need to understand how we're thinking. So obviously, if I defend myself, I'm attacked. If one feels as though attack is occurring, it's because there's a defense in place that is protecting that mind and heart from experience of what's actually occurring. And you don't know what's actually occurring while you're in the posture of defense, because all you're perceiving is attack. I've been in situations where there was this perception of an attack going on. And the guidance that I received, and it wasn't about me being attacked, I just was witnessing a scene that seemed to have occurred over and over and over and over again, to the point where my frustration in witnessing that scene over and over again necessitated me to have a shift in my perception, because I just could not understand why this was happening over and over again. And the common denominator in that situation, in which it was happening over and over again, was me. So I needed to understand what was occurring, because I was tired of seeing the scene over and over again and thinking the same thing over and over again, and being locked in my own thinking and getting results of my thinking of what was occurring. So I had to stop and ask, and that's generally one of the keys for me. One of the keys for me in this process is when you begin to see, and this requires a bit of maturity and the willingness to allow, let's say, the reflection that you're receiving to be information that you can use about yourself rather than other people. So, when every situation that you're involved in begins to reflect the same sort of scenario, you know that you have the ability now to allow the jig to be up and look at it for what it is and see what it's about for you, for me. And that's generally the way it is. It was the way it is. And when I finally, in a situation I was involved with my wife, when I finally recognized that, God, whatever is going on in this situation, it's like, I'm the common denominator in my experience of it. So there must be something here for me to learn. And when I put my head down and finally asked for the guidance, I got a very clear understanding of what was occurring, why it was occurring, and what it was I was meant to do in the situation in order to free us both from the necessity of doing it over and over again. Um, and that's sort of what I'm talking about with this. You know, when you're surrounded, when every place you turn, you're seeing the same thing happen over and over again. You know, at least for me, that's the key, learning to use the reflection, which is your own projection. Projection makes perception, and you project out, and in this world of space-time, where the projection is not eternal, it's not infinite. Of course, changes the word to extension there, although extension and projection, a single mind is not capable of two different actions. Yet, in the need for understanding and clarity, the idea of projection and extension was sort of altered. However, when we discuss God creating, God creates by projecting from his mind, but he doesn't project it with a reflective capacity. He doesn't reflect upon that which he projects. He just projects it eternally and infinitely, because those are, let's call it, the characteristics or the attributes of the mind of God. And there is only love, so it's only love that he's projecting and extending infinitely, and you are that. Now, the human being, because of the nature of consciousness being the domain of the ego, reflects upon that which he projects as it comes back to him, because there's no eternality in it. It's not eternal. It's not infinite. It doesn't extend that way. So projection, and I've learned to look at it as an inverse mirror ball. You're this bit of light bouncing around this inverse mirrored ball, and you're looking at the reflection of the light bouncing around in patterns, and you begin to see these patterns and attempt to make sense of the patterns, rather than to look at the entirety of the situation that is not making any sense. So we look at these patterns much as we do with the solar system and the galaxies. We look up there, we see a few stars, and we attempt to know what they are by giving them a name. And then we decide that when certain situations are occurring within the certain vectors, certain angles that include various amounts of these constellations, and we've given the constellations meaning, we attempt to try to deduce what's going on based on where the event is taking place within the nature of the constellations that we've projected out of our mind and made these stars into some sort of formations. Now, when you free your mind, and many of you have had this experience, when you're out looking at the stars and you finally free your mind from the need to protect it by maintaining those constellations as being form associations with the meaning that they have, immediately what happens is you've loosed that world from what you thought it was, and then suddenly there's just an array of the brilliance of stars without the need to pick out anything definite other than you delight and enjoy the entirety of the light show that's happening. Now, when you do that, you've successfully not defended yourself against your own need to protect your ideas. And this is the same idea that we're talking about here. If I defend myself, I'm attacked. So if you're holding anything within some sort of rigid structure, and you're looking up the stars, somebody says, wow, that's pretty cool. Well, I don't see that. I see like, no, you're not seeing it correctly. No. You're both seeing it correctly, but you're both seeing it within your own willingness to accept your projected imagery as offering you information. And, the human mind has this tendency. The human mind has this tendency, when it's in a condition of doubt, it attempts, and Jesus discussed this, and Jesus discusses this when he talks about Sigmund Freud. When he talks about Sigmund Freud, he talks about the idea.
It's me. I'm sorry I couldn't take that call. I'm calling you back. Call me back. I'm driving. I'm on my way to Costco. I'm getting groceries to make a birthday party for Aunt Vicky. She's going to be 92.
And Vicky's going to be 92.
I love you. Call me back.
And Vicky's going to be 92, and there's a birthday party happening. This is something I needed to know between my ex-wife and I, who I was just speaking of earlier. So that's sort of interesting. Now, the truth of the matter is, when I was given the guidance as to what to do, when I stopped defending against that moment, and I was given the guidance as to what to do in the particular moment that I was occurring over and over again with my wife, and I got the understanding that the only thing I had been unwilling to do was to let the relationship go in its entirety, all of a sudden when I did that, there were no more obstacles in the way of releasing the relationship, and ever since then we've had a better relationship than we ever had before. So it's interesting. The love is there, but we removed the frame around which we constantly interacted in order to maintain and keep something together that didn't really need to be kept together in order to understand that there was love there. And so now we're on great terms. We talk all the time. We talk. There's no conflict in the conversations that we have. We help each other in every way possible, and we work together, which we were never able to do before. So this is a perfect example of what it is that I'm talking about. And I forgot the point I was talking about earlier before the phone call occurred. So that's what it is. If you defend yourself, you're attacked. Now, the way you know you're defending yourself is, well, if you're not numb, if you haven't numbed yourself or in denial of the experiential consequences that we call feelings, because the body is a medium of communication, and the body communicates to us what we're doing and how we're feeling, and those feelings offer us good information if we don't try to negate and deny them using these concepts. We can use the information. It's a feedback system in that sense. We can use the information to come to know exactly what's happening so that we can change the happening if we can change our minds about the happening if we so desire to. Right? And that's the necessity, the desire to do that. Now, sickness is a defense against the truth. So that if you defend yourself, you're attacked. Oh, so what I was saying is there have been situations that I've been in when I've had to ask, like, what's going on? And what was going on in these situations was entirely not what I thought. It was a situation that I witnessed day in and day out, in which I finally got sick and tired of, and I thought that, there was an attack and a defense and blah, 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 and literally Jesus was showing me how the gentleman who constantly felt that he was under attack and needed to defend himself was literally being handed the ball of light, which was his own awakening, and he just refused to take it because it wasn't the way he thought it was going to be. He didn't think his awakening would take place in the midst of a confrontation where he was feeling attacked. So therefore, where he was feeling attacked, so therefore thought that the attack was coming from someplace outside of himself, rather than seeing that which was he thought was his attacker was literally handing him the key to his own awakening. And there's no way you can tell when your mind is locked up in the need to defend itself against the world that's outside. Now, when you get to the point where you're defending against the whole world, then it's time to give up, and you may not know what you're giving up to or why. But I would advise abject surrender at that point in time, not to achieve anything other than the need to no longer defend yourself. It's also been true when I have been in situations, and this is one of the things that I talk about often, especially formal teaching situations, when people understand that they're coming to something and then their mind is set on the fact that, oh, I'm going here as such a place because this is how I awaken. Then their mind stops defending because the purpose has shifted. And when the purpose has shifted, all things are seen within the perception of a healing that's taken place. And I've seen radical shifts in consciousness simply because the posture was predetermined by the individual that they were not going to defend themselves. And in the moment when the perceived attack would normally have been experienced, the recognition and the position of mind in non-defense allowed that mind to spring into light and have an experience of awakening and be grateful for what he was previously always pissed off about, thinking that he was being attacked, when in fact it was only the defensive posture of the ego's need to maintain its existence within your mind, and you give it the attention it needs to survive, that has been causing the perception of being attacked and therefore the need to defend. And that's what this lesson is ultimately getting at. I mean, you stop protecting yourself from anything. You stop protecting yourself from love, because love is one of the anythings and everything you're protecting yourself from. So each moment can be a holy instant when you're no longer defending yourself. And the other thing is this is another part of the human mind. It's like the human beings swear, this is what I was talking about before, it just came back around, as Jesus was talking as Jesus spoke to Helen. Sigmund Freud knew full well that his theory was flawed. Yet instead of trying to get to the truth and utilize his theory to make it correct and correct it, what he attempted to do was to prove everyone else's theories wrong. Now, the fact that anyone can prove someone else wrong to the ego gives you the sense of superiority in thinking that you're right. But just because you can show someone or demonstrate theoretically and reasonably that they're wrong, that does not make you right. Yet it'll give you the sense of being righteous and right, but that's not true. You're not right just because someone else is wrong. You're right, you're upset, you're righted when you turn your mind over to the Holy Spirit, and in the decision to no longer defend yourself, because there's nothing to defend here. It's an illusion that the only thing it's useful for is defending yourself against the truth. And if you want the truth, then you have to stop defending yourself. And the second part of this is the cost of defending yourself is ultimately sickness, pain, suffering, and death. And when our minds begin to associate defense with sickness, pain, suffering, and death, there is introduced a motivation to no longer want to do that, because nobody wants to suffer. Yet, the misassociation between responsibility and blame in the human mind is profound. So when here's the idea that it's responsible, it then automatically experiences blame, and the emotions that come along with blame are guilt and shame and fear of retribution, which is ultimately what this is all about. We fear the retribution of God in our attempt to having usurped the power of his mind. And, we stole fire from the God and wait for God to punish us. Meantime, the God that we think we stole the fire from willingly gives us all things, shares his mind and his eternal nature and his infinite capacity to express love, and extend it eternally as you. So you're defending yourself against yourself, ultimately, and as above, so below, as within, so without. If you defend yourself against anything, you're defending yourself against everything, and everything is what God is. You're defending yourself against love. So my mind holds only what I think with God. If I defend myself, I am attacked. And sickness is a defense against the truth. So utilize what's occurring in your life to learn what your real thoughts are, because the thoughts that are happening up in your mind are the ones that the ego is using to prevent you from going down to where the real thoughts are affecting your experience, the unconscious. Gary Renard's first book was very good at dealing with the idea that, we're always trying to uncover his unconscious guilt and fear. But we don't really uncover the guilt and fear. We uncover the thoughts that allow the experience in our associations in the world of space and time to foster the condition of guilt and fear. And then when they come up, we can heal them. You can't heal what you don't own. What isn't yours is your awakening, isn't it? You're not. It's your dream. You're dreaming a dream that you need to awaken from. If it's somebody else's dreaming you, there's no possibility that you can awaken by your own power. I assure you, you're dreaming a dream under utilizing the power of God to dream in. You can change your mind and dream a new dream, and eventually dream out of the need for dreaming whatsoever at all. And that's what everybody wants, to be free from the illusions of space and time, to recognize they're saved and to be happy. So that'll be the end of today's lesson. So go forth and find out where you're defending yourself so you can free yourself from the need to do it. And no longer need to suffer sickness, pain, suffering, and death. How bad of a result can that be? I know the human being depends on death in order to escape the pain and suffering that they inflict upon themselves and all the world, and thinking that that's where their salvation is. And somewhere later on in time, they're going to get a reward for what it is they've done. And, that's the old idea. That's the old idea of heaven. We're introducing a new understanding of what heaven is within, so that we can have a new earth, a new world, wherein which the stars don't rule our love life, but we rule the stars with love.